When you look at the news from the last 24 hours, it just feels like this chaotic blur of headlines, right? But what if they aren't actually isolated events? In this explainer, we're going to connect the dots. We're going to show how a flashpoint in one part of the world, a cyber threat in another, and economic pressures hitting everywhere are all part of one single global system that's under an incredible amount of stress.
And this right here, this quote, it really nails it. We're not just dealing with one fire at a time anymore. We're facing a convergence of risks. Just imagine the huge tectonic plates of our world, geopolitics, technology, economics, all shifting and grinding against each other at the same time. It's creating these shockwaves we've just never seen before. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So where do we even begin? Well, we have to start at the epicenter of the most immediate shockwave, a conflict in the Middle East that is escalating, and fast. So over the past day, we've seen continued attacks on crucial energy infrastructure. We've seen a huge spike in drone and missile activity that's put the entire Gulf airspace on high alert. But here's the real kicker, that third point. We've moved past those shadowy proxy fights. This is now direct strategic signaling between major powers. The rules of the game are changing right before our eyes, and the risk of a terrifying miscalculation is higher than it's been in a very, very long time. This is a deeply concerning new reality. That line we used to think existed between military and non-military targets, it's getting blurrier by the minute. We're talking about civilian infrastructure, commercial airports, fuel depots, things that are now increasingly exposed. The traditional rules of conflict are basically being erased, and that puts ordinary people directly in the crossfire.
And the consequences are hitting now, and they're global. The risk to the world's oil supply is critical. The cost to insure and just move ships through these vital sea lanes is absolutely skyrocketing. And look, for the first time in a while, a wider regional war isn't just some distant fear. It's become a credible, high-stakes risk that's on the table.
Okay, so let's follow that shockwave, right? Because a regional conflict, it never, ever stays regional. Its first and most powerful ripple effect travels right through the lifeblood of the global economy, energy.
This chart shows you exactly what that shockwave looks like in hard numbers. This isn't theoretical, it's the real, tangible price of instability. You can see the surge in insurance premiums, shipping costs, and oil futures. Every single one of those rising bars translates to higher costs for businesses, and for you and me, thousands of miles away from the actual conflict zone.
And this impact is playing out differently across continents. In Europe, the focus immediately snaps to energy security and defense. Over in the Americas, it's all about tracking the risk of inflation as those oil prices climb. And across Africa, you have economies that depend on imports facing a deepening, painful strain.
Which brings us to another one of those dark realities. The nations with the least economic resilience are often the ones hit the absolute hardest by these global shocks. They didn't start the conflict, they don't set the oil prices, but they bear a completely disproportionate share of the pain. It's a fundamental and frankly unfair imbalance in our interconnected world.
So, we've seen the economic shockwave, the one you can track on a chart. But at the exact same time, there's another conflict escalating on an invisible battlefield, one that's fought through fiber optic cables and financial networks. It's a really critical question to ask ourselves. Because while all of our attention is fixed on the missiles and the oil tankers, some of the most significant threats are operating completely out of sight in the rapidly expanding world of cyber and financial crime. And a key weapon in this invisible war is something called AI-driven fraud. Think of it this way. Criminal networks are using artificial intelligence to create financial scams and cyber attacks that are hyper-realistic, constantly evolving, and so sophisticated that they're becoming nearly impossible for our traditional security systems to even detect. So what this all means is that we are in a massive digital arms race. On one side, you've got these criminal networks using AI evolving at lightning speed. And on the other side, you have the regulatory and security systems that are, well, they're almost always playing catch-up. That gap you see between the two, that's where all the danger lies. So, with all these huge forces, geopolitical, economic, technological, all crashing into each other, how does a major nation even begin to navigate the storm? For a really fascinating case study, let's zoom in on India's current Highwire Act.
This really lays out the two sides of the coin for India. On one side, you have these huge vulnerabilities, a heavy dependence on imported energy, immense geopolitical pressure, serious environmental stress. But on the other side, you've got these soaring ambitions, leadership in the space race, becoming a global tech hub, and helping to shape the very future of AI. It's a massive balancing act.
And you can see this strategy playing out in real time. Right now, India is actively navigating those energy disruptions from the Middle East, while at the same time, it's carefully balancing its diplomatic ties with everyone from Western powers to other emerging economies. And all the while, it's pouring investment into its own satellite and digital infrastructure to try and secure its future.
But even with all these grand ambitions, there's the reality on the ground. Remember those global energy price spikes we talked about? This is where they hit home. For millions of lower-income households in India, that volatility isn't just a headline in the news, it's a daily threat to their economic stability.
Okay, let's pull all of these different threads together now. We've seen a military flashpoint, an energy shockwave, an invisible cyber war, and one nation's incredible balancing act. What does it all tell us about the world we're living in right now? It tells us that three really powerful forces are shaping our reality. First, this convergence of crises. Geopolitics, economics, and technology are no longer separate lanes. They're a tangled superhighway. Second, civilian exposure. Conflict is no longer confined to some faraway battlefield. It disrupts our infrastructure, our daily lives. And third, the expansion of these invisible threats, like AI-driven crime, that have a massive impact but operate just below the surface. And look, this is why it matters to all of us. Geopolitical instability isn't some abstract concept for diplomats to talk about anymore. It means students from India who are studying in the Gulf are facing disruptions to their education. It means families everywhere are dealing with the economic fallout. The global has become deeply personal. Which leaves us with one final and really crucial question. In a world where crises are no longer isolated events, but a constant, interconnected state of being, what does it even mean to be resilient anymore? It's not just about weathering one storm. It's about learning to navigate a permanently turbulent climate. And figuring that out, that is the defining challenge of our time.